2 years. 2 years of walking into my own house and feeling like I was stepping into a courtroom where I was permanently the defendant. But last Tuesday evening changed everything when she looked me dead in the eye and said those words that would become the final nail in our relationship's coffin. I had just finished loading the dishwasher after dinner, something I did every single night without being asked, when she started her usual routine. You know the one, that passive-aggressive commentary disguised as helpful observations. This time it was about how I stacked the plates wrong, how the glasses weren't positioned properly, how I never seemed to learn the right way to do anything despite living in this house for 2 years. Seriously, how hard is it to put things where they belong? She said, rearranging everything I had just organized. It's like you do this stuff wrong on purpose just to annoy me. I took a deep breath and counted to 5, the way I had trained myself to do over the past few months. I loaded the dishwasher. It's clean. The dishes will get washed. What exactly is the problem here? That's when her voice shifted to that tone. You know the one I'm talking about. That condescending, superior pitch that made every word sound like she was explaining basic concepts to a particularly slow child. The problem is that you never listen. The problem is that you do everything halfway. The problem is that I have to constantly fix everything you touch in this house. Something was different this time. Maybe it was the way she said it. Or maybe it was just that I had finally heard this exact speech one too many times. But instead of my usual silence, I felt this strange calmness wash over me. And what exactly have you contributed to this house lately? I asked, genuine curiosity in my voice. Her eyes widened like I had just asked her to explain rocket science. Excuse me. I work 40+ hours a week. I pay the mortgage, I handle the utilities, I do the grocery shopping, I cook dinner most nights, and apparently I load the dishwasher incorrectly. So I'm just wondering what your specific contributions are to this household. The silence that followed was thick enough to cut with a knife. She opened her mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. I can't believe you just said that to me. After everything I do around here, after all the emotional labor I put into this relationship, you have the nerve to question my contributions. Emotional labor? I actually laughed. Not a mean laugh, just genuine amusement. Is that what you call starting an argument every single day about how I breathe wrong? That's when she exploded. I need time to process how stupid I was to accept living with you, she screamed, her face turning that particular shade of red that usually meant I was in for a 3-hour lecture about my various character defects. But instead of the familiar pit in my stomach, I felt this weird sense of relief. Like a fog was lifting. I looked at her standing there, shaking with rage over a dishwasher, and I started to smile. Not a cruel smile, just the kind of smile you get when you finally understand a joke that everyone else got hours ago. You know what? I said, my voice perfectly calm. The stupid one here is me, for accepting to live with someone who only complains and argues all the time. The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might faint. I turned around and walked toward the front door, grabbing my keys from the hook and my wallet from the counter. 24 months of walking on eggshells, 24 months of defending myself for existing in my own house, 24 months of wondering what I had done wrong this time. It all just evaporated in that moment. Where are you going? Her voice cracked, suddenly small. Out, I said without turning around. You said you needed time to process how stupid you were. Well, congratulations. You've got all the time in the world now. I opened the front door and stepped outside into the cool evening air. For the first time in 2 years, I felt like I could actually breathe. You can't just leave, she called after me. We need to talk about this. I paused at my car door and looked back at her standing in the doorway, suddenly looking smaller and more uncertain than I had seen her in years. No, I said simply. We really don't. I got in my car and drove away, leaving her standing there with her mouth hanging open. My phone started buzzing before I even reached the end of our street. By the time I pulled into the parking lot of the 24-hour diner across town, I had 14 missed calls and twice as many text messages. I turned the phone face down on the passenger seat and ordered coffee from the night shift waitress, who looked like she had seen her fair share of relationship drama. Rough night? She asked, refilling my cup without being asked. Actually, I said, surprised by how true it felt. It's the best night I've had in 2 years. She smiled knowingly and moved on to the next table, leaving me alone with my coffee and the sound of my phone buzzing against the vinyl seat like an angry bee trapped in a jar. Sitting in that diner booth, Watching the steam rise from my coffee cup, I couldn't help but think about how this whole mess started. 3 years ago, she seemed like the kind of woman who had her life together. Smart, confident, successful in her marketing job. We met at a friend's barbecue, and she actually impressed me with how she handled herself. Direct, no nonsense, knew what she wanted. The first few months were great. She was fun to be around, had opinions about everything, and wasn't afraid to speak her mind. I thought I had found someone who could match my energy, someone who wouldn't play games or hide behind passive-aggressive hints. Boy, was I wrong about that last part. The change didn't happen overnight. It started small, little comments about how I folded my shirts, suggestions about how I should arrange my living room furniture, observations about my food choices at restaurants. I brushed it off as her being detail-oriented, maybe even caring enough to help me improve. Looking back now, that was my first mistake. I mistook control for caring. The real turning point came about 8 months in, when she moved in with me. That's when her helpful suggestions became daily corrections, and her observations became lectures. Suddenly, everything I did had a better way of being done, and she was always ready to show me what that way was. Take grocery shopping, for example. I had been feeding myself successfully for 28 years before I met her. But according to her, I bought the wrong brands, shopped at the wrong stores, and clearly had no understanding of nutrition or budgeting. So she took over grocery shopping entirely, then complained that she had to do everything herself. When I offered to go with her to learn her preferred way of doing things, she would sigh dramatically and say things like, "Never mind, it's easier if I just do it myself." But then she would spend the rest of the day making comments about how she always had to handle everything alone. The pattern was always the same. Criticize my way of doing something, take over the task, then complain about having to do it. Rinse and repeat with cooking, cleaning, bill paying, social planning, you name it. What really got under my skin was how she would do this in front of other people. At dinner parties, she would openly correct my stories or interrupt me to provide what she called important context that usually made me look like an idiot. At the hardware store, she would step in when I was talking to employees and essentially take over the conversation like I wasn't capable of buying a light bulb without supervision. "He's not very good with details," she would say with this apologetic smile, like she was embarrassing a child who had tried to help but just couldn't quite manage it. The worst part? I let it happen. I actually started doubting myself. Maybe I was doing things wrong. Maybe she did have better ideas. Maybe I should just be grateful that someone cared enough to help me improve. That mindset lasted about a year and a half. The breaking point came last Christmas at her sister's house. I was telling a story about a client meeting that had gone particularly well, feeling good about a project I had landed for my company. She listened for about 30 seconds before cutting me off. "That's not exactly how it happened," she said, even though she wasn't even there. "What he's not telling you is that he almost blew the whole deal because he showed up late and forgot half his presentation materials." I stared at her. I was 5 minutes late because of traffic, and I had everything I needed. "5 minutes late is still late," she said, like she was explaining gravity to a kindergartner. "And you called me panicking because you couldn't find your portfolio." The entire table went quiet. Her sister looked uncomfortable. Her brother-in-law found something fascinating about his dinner plate. Even her parents seemed to realize this had crossed a line. "I called to let you know I might be a few minutes late," I said carefully. I wasn't panicking about anything. "Well, that's your version," she said with a little laugh. "But I was the one who had to talk you off the ledge." That night, driving home, I tried to bring it up. "Hey, I felt kind of thrown under the bus back there when you were telling that story about my client meeting." "Oh, come on," she said. "I was just giving them the full picture. You always leave out the parts that make you look less perfect." I don't think I was trying to look perfect. I was just sharing good news about something that went well at work. "See, you're being defensive again. I'm trying to help you be more honest about yourself, and you turn it into an attack on me." And somehow, by the end of that conversation, I was apologizing to her for being defensive about her public humiliation of me. That's when I realized I was living in some kind of alternate reality where up was down and criticism was caring. But even knowing that, I stuck around for another year. You know why? Because every time I started to seriously consider leaving, she would sense it somehow and switch tactics. She would be sweet for a few days, maybe even admit she had been too hard on me lately, promise to work on her communication style. "I just want us to be the best we can be together," she would say, and it sounded so reasonable. Sometimes I push too hard because I care so much about our relationship. Those good periods never lasted more than a week or two. Then it was back to the daily inventory of my failures, the helpful corrections, the public undermining disguised as honesty. My phone buzzed again, probably the 20th time since I left the house. This time I picked it up and scrolled through the messages. The first few were angry, variations on how dare I walk out on her, how immature I was being, how I owed her an explanation. Then they shifted to confusion, asking where I was, saying we needed to talk, that this wasn't like me. The most recent one made me laugh out loud. I know you're upset, but running away won't solve anything. Come home so we can work this out like adults. Running away. Like I was a teenager having a tantrum instead of a grown man who had finally decided he was done being treated like a defective appliance that needed constant repair. I turned the phone off completely and ordered another cup of coffee. For the first time in 2 years, I was in no hurry to get anywhere. I ended up at my buddy's house around midnight. He was still awake, watching some late-night comedy show and drinking beer on his couch. When he opened the door and saw me standing there with my hands in my pockets, he didn't even ask questions. Just stepped aside and pointed to the fridge. Grab a beer. The couch pulls out into a bed. That's the thing about real friends. They don't need the whole story up front. They just make space for you when you need it. The next morning, over coffee and leftover pizza, I gave him the basics. He listened without interrupting, nodding in the right places, until I finished with the dishwasher argument and my dramatic exit. About time, he said. Like I had just told him, I finally decided to replace my broken garage door opener. That's it. About time. Dude, I've been watching you turn into a ghost of yourself for the past 2 years. Every time we hang out, you're checking your phone like you're expecting bad news. You apologize for everything, even stuff that doesn't need apologizing for. Last month at the bar, you asked permission to order nachos. Nachos. I winced. He was right about that one. She had me convinced I was inconsiderate if I didn't check with her first about stuff like that. See? That's not normal, man. That's not how relationships work. My phone had been buzzing constantly since 6 in the morning. I finally turned it back on during my second cup of coffee and scrolled through the messages. 43 texts and 16 missed calls. The tone had shifted overnight from angry to worried to manipulative. The early morning messages were classics. I can't believe you're being so childish about this. You're really going to throw away 3 years over a stupid argument? I'm worried about you driving around upset like that. Then came the guilt trip phase. I called your mom to see if you were there. She's worried sick. Your sister is asking what's wrong. What am I supposed to tell people? I haven't slept all night wondering if you're okay. But the most recent one showed her real strategy. I've been thinking about what you said last night, and maybe you have a point. I know I can be hard to live with sometimes. Can we please talk about this? I love you. Come home so we can figure this out together. My friend read over my shoulder and snorted. Classic manipulation playbook. Anger, guilt, fake concern, then love bombing. Does she always follow this script? Pretty much. Usually works too. Not this time though, right? I looked at the messages again, and for the first time, they just looked pathetic. Like a kid throwing different tantrums to see which one gets the parent's attention. No, not this time. I turned the phone off again and spent the rest of the morning helping my buddy fix his deck. Physical work, clear problems with obvious solutions. It felt good to do something where the results actually matched the effort you put in. Around noon, I drove to my office to get some work done and clear my head. The routine felt normal, grounding even. No one questioning my methods. No helpful suggestions about how I could organize my desk better. No commentary on my choice of lunch from the sandwich shop downstairs. That's when it really hit me. I hadn't realized how much energy I was spending just existing in defensive mode all the time. Always ready to justify my choices, explain my reasoning, or deflect the next criticism. Being alone, making my own decisions without having to run them past the approval committee of one, felt like taking off shoes that were 2 sizes too small. By evening, the message count had reached triple digits. I scrolled through them while eating takeout Chinese food, another choice I made without consultation or criticism. The messages had cycled back to anger. This is ridiculous. You can't just disappear and refuse to talk. I'm starting to think you planned this whole thing. If you're trying to scare me, it's working, but this isn't funny anymore. Then back to bargaining. I'll go to couples therapy if that's what you want. We can set some ground rules about how we communicate. I know I've been stressed lately. Work has been crazy, and I've been taking it out on you. The one that really got me laughing was, I reorganized the whole kitchen the way you like it. The dishwasher is loaded exactly how you prefer. She still didn't get it. She thought this was about dishwasher loading techniques. I started typing a response, then deleted it. Started another one, deleted that too. Finally, I put the phone in a drawer and left it there. The silence was actually peaceful. That night, lying on my friend's couch and staring at the ceiling, I realized I was already sleeping better than I had in months. No walking on eggshells. No wondering what mood she would be in tomorrow. No mental preparation for the daily critique session disguised as conversation. I made a decision right there. This wasn't a break or a cooling off period or a dramatic gesture to get her attention. This was me choosing to stop living in a relationship that had become a full-time job with no benefits and a boss who would never be satisfied with my performance. The phone in the drawer kept buzzing periodically, but I ignored it. Whatever she had to say, I had heard enough variations of it over the past 2 years. The conversation was over, even if she didn't know it yet. Tomorrow, I would have to go back to the house to get some of my things. That would be the real test, facing her directly instead of hiding behind silence and distance. But tonight, for the first time in 2 years, I fell asleep without dreading tomorrow. I waited until Thursday afternoon to go back to the house, giving myself 3 full days to get my head straight. The message count had reached somewhere north of 150, but I stopped checking after message 30. I knew what they said anyway. The same cycle of anger, guilt, promises, and threats on repeat. When I pulled into the driveway, her car was there. I had hoped she would be at work, making this easier, but part of me knew she would have taken time off to be there when I showed up. She had probably been watching for my car since Tuesday night. I used my key and walked in like I owned the place, which technically I did. She was sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open and papers spread everywhere, trying to look busy and important. The performance started immediately. "Oh, so you finally decided to come home," she said without looking up from her screen. "I've been worried sick for 3 days. I'm not home. I'm here to get some of my things." That got her attention. She looked up with this expression of shock and hurt that might have worked on me a week ago. Now it just looked rehearsed. "Get your things? What are you talking about? We need to discuss what happened the other night." "No, we don't," I said, heading toward the bedroom. "There's nothing to discuss." She followed me, of course. "You can't be serious. You're going to end a 3-year relationship over a stupid fight about dishes." I opened the closet and started pulling my clothes off hangers. This isn't about dishes. This is about the fact that you can't go 24 hours without criticizing, correcting, or humiliating me. I'm done pretending that's normal. I don't humiliate you. I try to help you improve yourself. There's a difference. I stopped packing and turned to look at her. "Remember last Christmas at your sister's house? When you told everyone I almost blew a client meeting because I was late and panicking? I was just being honest about what happened. I was 5 minutes late because of traffic, and I called to let you know. But you turned it into this story about me being incompetent and needing you to calm me down. In front of your entire family." She crossed her arms. "You're being overly sensitive about that." "Am I? How about last month when we were at dinner with a couple from next door, and you interrupted me 3 times to correct details in a story I was telling about my own job? You were leaving out important context. Or how about every single time we go grocery shopping and you make comments about my choices loud enough for other people to hear? Or when you reorganize my stuff and then complain that I can never find anything? I'm trying to help you be more organized." I grabbed a duffel bag from the closet shelf and kept packing. "Here's the thing. I don't need help being more organized. I don't need help telling stories. I don't need help loading the dishwasher. What I need is a partner who treats me like an adult instead of a project that needs constant fixing." That's when the tears started. "Right on schedule. Please don't do this," she said, her voice getting smaller. "I know I've been difficult lately. Work has been stressful, and I know I take it out on you sometimes. But we can work on this together. We've been working on this for 2 years. Every time I bring up how your constant criticism makes me feel, you turn it around and make it about how I'm being defensive or sensitive. I'm tired of being wrong about everything in my own house." "It's our house," she said, like that meant something. "No, it's my house. My name is on the mortgage. You moved in with me, remember? And now you're going to move out." The tears stopped abruptly. "You can't kick me out. I have rights. Actually, I can. You're not on the lease or the mortgage. You don't pay rent. Legally, you're a guest who has overstayed her welcome. Her face went through about 5 different expressions in 2 seconds. This is insane. You're throwing away everything we built together over hurt feelings. What exactly did we build together? A relationship where I apologize for existing and you get to play life coach 24 hours a day, where every conversation is an opportunity for you to point out what I'm doing wrong. I zipped up the duffel bag and headed for the bathroom to grab my toiletries. She was still following me, still talking. I never meant to make you feel that way. I thought you wanted me to be honest with you about things. There's a difference between being honest and being constantly critical. When someone tells you that your behavior is hurting them, and your response is to explain why they're wrong to feel hurt, that's not honesty. That's just selfishness. So that's it. You're not even willing to try counseling or anything. I stopped and looked at her directly. Let me ask you something. In the past 3 years, can you think of a single time when you admitted you were wrong about something without trying to explain why you were actually right? She opened her mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. I'm thinking. The fact that you have to think about it proves my point. That's not fair. You're putting me on the spot. I'm asking you a simple question about our relationship. If you can't answer it without preparation time, maybe that tells you something. She was quiet for a moment, and I could see the wheels turning. Finally, she said, okay, maybe I have been too critical. Maybe I do need to work on how I communicate. But that doesn't mean we should break up. It means we should get help. I don't want help. I want out. But why? Why can't we fix this? I sat down on the edge of the bed and looked at her. For just a second, I almost felt sorry for her. She genuinely seemed confused about why someone would choose to leave rather than spend years in therapy trying to teach her how to treat people with basic respect. Because I don't want to be in a relationship that needs this much fixing. I want to be with someone who actually likes me the way I am, not someone who sees me as a renovation project. That seemed to finally sink in. Her shoulders dropped, and she sat down in the chair by the window. I do like you the way you are. No, you don't. You like the version of me that might exist someday if I follow all your suggestions and fix all my flaws. But I'm never going to be that person because that person doesn't exist. I stood up and grabbed my bathroom stuff. I'll be back this weekend to get the rest of my things. I'd appreciate it if you weren't here when I come back. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. You've got family, friends, coworkers. Figure it out. As I walked toward the front door, she called after me one more time. This is a mistake. You're going to regret this. I turned around at the door. The only thing I regret is waiting so long to do it. And then I left. Again. But this time, I knew I wouldn't be coming back. By Friday morning, the nuclear option had been deployed. My phone started ringing at 7 a.m. Not her number, but my sister's. What the hell is going on? She said before I could even say hello. I just got off the phone with your girlfriend, and she's crying about how you abandoned her and won't return her calls. Ex-girlfriend, I corrected. And I didn't abandon anyone. I ended a relationship that wasn't working. She said you just disappeared for 3 days without explanation and then showed up to kick her out of the house. I rubbed my eyes and sat up on the couch. Did she mention the part where she spends every day telling me everything I do wrong? Or how she humiliates me in public whenever she gets the chance? There was a pause. No, she didn't mention that. Of course she didn't. She called you to get reinforcements, not to tell the whole story. My sister sighed. Look, I don't know what happened between you two, but she sounded really upset. Maybe you should at least talk to her. I did talk to her. That conversation is over. After I hung up, my mom called. Then my dad. Then my cousin. She had worked her way through my entire family, giving them all the same story about how I had suddenly gone crazy and was destroying our relationship over nothing. The funny thing was, once I started telling people my side, they weren't nearly as shocked as she probably expected them to be. I was wondering when you were going to figure that out, my mom said after I explained about the constant criticism and public humiliation. Last time you brought her to dinner, she corrected you 6 times in one conversation. Your father and I talked about it after you left. You never said anything. It wasn't our place to say anything. But we noticed. Even better was my dad's reaction. Good. Life's too short to spend it with someone who doesn't appreciate what you bring to the table. By Saturday, she had moved on to mutual friends. My buddy who had been letting me crash on his couch got a tearful phone call about how worried she was about my mental health and how out of character this behavior was for me. She thinks you might be having some kind of breakdown, he told me over breakfast. I told her you seemed pretty clear-headed to me, But she kept insisting this wasn't like you. She's right. The old me would have apologized by now and promised to try harder. What did you tell her? Nothing. I told her I couldn't discuss your personal business with her and hung up. That afternoon, I went back to the house to get the rest of my stuff. Her car wasn't there, which was a relief, but she had left a note on the kitchen counter. A long, handwritten letter about how much our relationship meant to her and how she couldn't understand why I was throwing it all away. The letter was classic her. Lots of emotion, lots of promises to change, but zero acknowledgement of the specific behaviors I had called out. She was sorry I felt hurt, sorry there had been miscommunication, sorry things had gotten to this point. But she never once said she was sorry for treating me like a child who needed constant correction. I crumpled up the letter and threw it away without finishing it. While I was loading my books into boxes, the neighbor from across the street came over. She was an older woman who had lived there for 20 years and had watched our whole relationship play out from her front porch. Moving out? She asked, like she was asking about the weather. Yeah, relationship ended. I'm not surprised. That girl had a mouth on her. I could hear her yelling at you from across the street sometimes. I paused with a box in my hands. You could hear us arguing? Honey, the whole neighborhood could hear her. You, not so much. But her? She could wake the dead when she got going. Great. So not only was I being humiliated in private, but the entire street had front row seats to it. For what it's worth, she continued, you seem like a nice young man. You deserve better than someone who talks to you like that. Loading my stuff into the truck felt like shedding weight. 3 years of accumulated belongings, but most of it was actually mine anyway. She had moved in with her clothes and some kitchen gadgets, but everything else, the furniture, the electronics, the books, the decorations, had been mine from the start. Sunday evening, I was settling into my buddy's guest room when she tried a new approach. Instead of calling me, she called my workplace. Not my direct line, but the main office number, and asked to speak to my supervisor about a family emergency. My boss pulled me aside Monday morning. Look, I don't know what's going on in your personal life, and it's none of my business. But your ex-girlfriend called here yesterday, saying she was worried about your mental health and asking if you had seemed unstable at work lately. What did you tell her? I told her I couldn't discuss employee information with non-family members and hung up. But heads up, she seemed pretty determined. That crossed a line. Trying to manipulate my family was one thing, but dragging my job into it was something else entirely. I called her for the first time since Thursday. You called my work? Are you insane? I'm worried about you, she said, like that justified everything. You're not acting like yourself. I'm acting exactly like myself. For the first time in 3 years, I'm acting like myself instead of like someone who's constantly afraid of being criticized. I never wanted you to be afraid of me. Then why did you call my boss and try to convince him I was having a mental breakdown? Because I think you were having a breakdown. This isn't like you. You don't just end relationships without trying to work things out. I did try to work things out. For 3 years. Every time I told you that your constant criticism was hurting me, you turned it around and made it my fault for being too sensitive. I'm willing to work on that now. I'm not. I'm done working on it. I'm done being a project for you to fix. Find someone else to micromanage. Please don't do this. I love you. No, you don't. You love the idea of molding me into someone you could actually respect. But you never loved me as I am. I hung up and blocked her number. Then I called my boss and gave him permission to tell her directly that if she contacted my workplace again, we would consider it harassment and involve security. That night, my buddy and I were watching a game and drinking beer when he asked, "You doing okay with all this?" No second thoughts. I thought about it for a minute. You know what? I feel guilty for not feeling worse about it. Shouldn't I be devastated about ending a 3-year relationship? Maybe. Or maybe you're just relieved to stop living in a war zone. He was right. I wasn't heartbroken. I was exhausted from 3 years of defending myself in my own life. But I wasn't sad about ending it. If anything, I felt like I had finally stopped hitting my head against a wall. The relief was overwhelming. I think I'm going to start looking for my own place this week, I said. No rush, man. But yeah, probably time to start the next chapter. The next chapter. I like the sound of that. 6 months later, I was sitting in my own living room, in my own place, eating takeout straight from the container without anyone commenting on my table manners or suggesting I use a proper plate. The silence was still my favorite sound. I had found a decent rental across town. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. No shared mortgage drama, no arguments about decorating, No one reorganizing my stuff when I wasn't looking. Just my space, arranged how I liked it, functioning exactly the way I wanted it to function. The first few weeks had been interesting. I kept catching myself asking permission for things out loud. Should I order pizza tonight? Before remembering there was no one there to ask. It took about a month to break the habit of justifying my choices to an empty room. Work had gotten better too. My boss noticed I seemed more focused, more confident in meetings. Turns out when you're not spending mental energy preparing for the evening critique session, you have more bandwidth for actual productivity. I was flipping through channels when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I almost didn't answer it, but something made me pick up. Hello. Silence for a few seconds. Then, it's me. I recognized the voice immediately. She had gotten a new number, probably hoping I wouldn't screen the call. What do you want? I've been thinking about us a lot lately. I miss what we had. I muted the TV. We didn't have anything. We had a relationship where you criticized everything I did and I apologized for existing. That's not fair. We had good times too. Name one. Another silence. See? You can't even think of one without preparation time. I just wanted to see if maybe we could try again. I've been working on myself, going to therapy. Good for you. Work on yourself for your own sake, not because you think it'll get me back. Don't you miss me at all? I looked around my peaceful living room, thought about my stress-free mornings, my quiet evenings, my weekends without drama. No, I said simply. I don't miss being told I'm doing everything wrong. I don't miss walking on eggshells in my own house. I don't miss being humiliated in front of other people. I don't miss any of it. You're different now, colder. I'm the same person I always was. I just stopped pretending your behavior was acceptable. So that's it. You won't even consider trying again. There's nothing to try again. You showed me exactly who you are for 3 years. I believed you, and I chose to walk away from it. That was the right choice then, and it's still the right choice now. I hung up before she could respond and blocked the new number. Funny thing was, I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no second thoughts. Just mild annoyance that she had interrupted a perfectly good evening. 2 weeks later, I ran into her sister at the grocery store. She gave me this pitying look and said, "She's really struggling, you know? She thought you two would work things out eventually." "That's unfortunate," I said, because it was the truth. It was unfortunate that she had spent 6 months hoping instead of moving on. You two seemed so good together. We really didn't. She just convinced everyone we did by controlling the narrative. Her sister looked uncomfortable and changed the subject. That night, I realized I had gone an entire day without thinking about her until that grocery store encounter. 6 months ago, she had dominated every thought, every decision, every moment of my day. Now she was just someone I used to know who had taught me an important lesson about what I wouldn't tolerate in my life. I poured myself a beer, put on some music, and started planning a weekend trip with my buddies. No permission needed, no explanation required, no criticism expected. Just a grown man making plans for his own life. The relationship was finally, completely, definitively over, and I had never been more sure about anything in my life.
Our story has come to an end. If you've made it this far, how about subscribing to our channel? It helps us immensely. I've selected 2 other videos for you that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I'll be waiting for you in the next story. See you soon.